When somebody tries to use Hosea chapter 2 verse 11 and say that, well, because it says in this verse that he will cause the feast days and the new moons and Sabbaths and solemn feasts to cease, therefore that means that Yahweh is going to cause all Sabbath days and solemn feast days to stop, point blank period, even here in America, and therefore you don't have to keep new moons, you don't have to keep the Sabbath day, you don't have to keep the Day of Atonement or the Feast of Trumpets. No, 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 no. Tell them that's not what this verse means. What this verse means was that, as I've already explained earlier, that this was a future prophecy that eventually ended up being fulfilled, and it got fulfilled in the book of Lamentations, where it talks about where Yahweh came back and stopped all the feast days, where he stopped all the feast days in Jerusalem, in Israel. He has stopped it there. He caused it to cease there. But that doesn't mean he caused it to cease everywhere else in the world. Doesn't mean he caused it to cease like in America or in Russia or in China. No, he only caused it to stop in the land, in the promised land. One last excuse that people may use when they say you can't keep the law in captivity is that they will use Ezra chapter 7 verse 6 through 10 to say that the law can only be done in the land. So let's go to Ezra chapter 7, and I'm going to read verse 6 all the way to 10. So Ezra chapter 7 verse 6, it reads, "This Ezra went up from Babylon, and he was a ready scribe in the law of Moses, which Yahweh Elohim of Israel had given. And the king granted him all his requests according to the hand of Yahweh his Elohim upon him. And there went up some of the children of Israel, and of the priests, and the Levites, and the singers, and the porters, and the Nethims, unto Jerusalem in the 7th year of Artaxerxes the king. And he came to Jerusalem in the 5th month, which was in the 7th year of the king. For upon the first day of the 1st month began he to go up from Babylon, and on the first day of the 5th month came he to Jerusalem, according to the good hand of his Elohim upon him. For Ezra had prepared his heart to seek the law of Yahweh, and to do it, and to teach in Israel statutes and judgments." Now regarding verse 10, it could be interpreted in one of two ways. One way that it could be interpreted is that it could be saying that the reason why Ezra prepared his heart to seek the law of Yah and do it was because he couldn't do it in captivity. But now that he is no longer in captivity, but is now back in the land, he can now do the law. This is one way of looking at it. Another way you could interpret this verse is to say that just like Ezra prepared his heart to seek the law of Yah and do it when he was in captivity, now he is about to do the same thing in Jerusalem, and he is going to prepare his heart to seek the law of Yahweh in the promised land and do it there as well. Now, whichever way you choose to look at it, just know this. It did not say anywhere in these verses, including verse 10, that Israel can only keep the law in the promised land, or that Israel is not allowed to keep the law while in captivity. If we are not under the covenant of the law, is it evil to keep the law in captivity here in America? If the answer to that question is yes, then prove it to me. Where is a testimony in the scriptures that shows Hebrews keeping Yahweh's laws while in captivity, and because of this, Yahweh punished them by making them stay in captivity longer, or he plagued them with diseases, or he did something bad to them? Where is any type of testimony that shows anything like that? Well, of course, there aren't any because they don't exist. My next question is, in order to keep the law, do you have to be free? Or in other words, if you are not free, are you not able to keep the law? When it talks about the covenant of the law in Deuteronomy chapter 29, verses 9 through 15, it does not say you have to be free in order to keep the covenant. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 29. And I'm going to read verses 9 through 15. Well, I read this earlier, so I'll just go ahead and read the ninth verse because I read it earlier before. In Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 9, it reads, "Keep therefore the words of this covenant, and do them, that ye may prosper in all that ye do." Do you have to be in the land or the wilderness to keep the law? Joseph was taken out of the land and put into Egypt and died in Egypt, but yet he still kept the law of Yahweh, and Yahweh was still with him. Some people say that it's common sense that if you break the covenant and the covenant is broken, then how can you keep the covenant, especially in captivity? They might say you can't keep something that is broken. Show me anywhere in the scriptures where it says that when the covenant of the law is broken, you are no longer required to keep it. Where does it say that specially, or where does it even remotely suggest that? It doesn't say that anywhere, but some might say that common sense tells you if the covenant is broken, then you can't keep it anymore. Well, if we are going to use common sense instead of scriptural evidence, then let's use common sense then. Does it make any sense at all to not only say that we don't have to do the law in captivity, but then to actually go about not keeping any of the laws by committing adultery, murder, marrying foreign wives, etc.? But instead, what you have to do is just wait until you go into the wilderness to start keeping the laws. So you can literally do anything and everything that you want to. You can worship a false god on purpose, knowing full well that it is a false god, and say out loud that you hate Yahweh and that JC is better than him. And then once you go into the wilderness, then you tell yourself, okay, since I'm in the wilderness right now, I am going to stop committing idolatry, murder, and everything else that I was doing in captivity because I wanted to wait until I got into the wilderness before I started to do what was right and keeping the law. Now, do you honestly believe that Yahweh will allow this person to make it into the promised land after he purposely worshiped a false god and said that he hates Yahweh just because he is now keeping the new moons, feast days, and Sabbaths in the wilderness? Do you really think that this is common sense right here? Not only is that not common sense, it's complete insanity. Why would Yahweh allow a person into the promised land who not only didn't keep the laws while in captivity, but purposely broke all 613 laws just to make some sort of point to other Hebrews that all you need to do is wait until you get into the wilderness and then you can start keeping all 613 laws? Why would Yahweh allow a person like that into the promised land? Also, another thing for the people out there that are saying that you can't keep the law in captivity, are you saying that the people who keep the law in captivity and then go into the wilderness and keep the law there as well, that Yahweh is going to say to those people, you are not allowed to come into the promised land, but are going to hell? But the people who did not keep all 613 of my laws, but purposely broke all of them and instead waited until they got into the wilderness, those people I am going to let go into the promised land. Is that really what you are saying? If you are saying that, how could that make any sense at all? There is a reason why Yahweh doesn't tell his people that you don't have to keep his laws in captivity. And that reason is because God knows that people are then going to do whatever they want to do while in captivity. Imagine if you told a group of students that while you're in a school building, there are no rules or regulations. Do you think that those students are going to behave themselves and act decently and sit still in class and be nice and polite? Or do you think that they are going to do literally whatever they want to do and run wild and cause chaos? Clearly is going to be the latter because you told them that there are no rules and regulations. You told them that they don't have to obey any of the class rules or school policies. You are basically telling students inadvertently that they can do whatever they want, even if you don't mean to tell them that. The same thing applies to saying that you don't have to keep the laws in captivity. If you tell people this, then what's going to most likely happen is that this person is going to say to himself, oh, because I don't have to keep the law, I can literally do whatever I want to while in captivity. You are basically telling people they can do whatever they want while in captivity, just like you're telling the students they can do whatever they want while in school, even if that is not what you are intending to do. If Yahweh wants us to do something or not do something, He is going to let us know. He is going to make it very clear. So if we were not supposed to keep the law in captivity, then don't you think he would have made that very clear to everyone? Yah kept saying in the scriptures, keep the law, keep the law, keep the law here, and keep the law there. Excuse me. Yah kept telling people, keep the law in the land and keep it in the wilderness. Now, granted, I don't see specifically where God said, keep the law in captivity, but he also didn't say, don't keep the law while in captivity. Even if you can't keep every single law in captivity, especially the judgments, you're still better off keeping as many laws as you can, because who is more likely to make it into the promised land? The people who kept Yahweh's commandments or who didn't keep his commandments. The only way we are no longer under the covenant of the law is if Yah himself says we are no longer under it. But Yah has never said anywhere in the Holy Scriptures that we are no longer under the covenant. The only thing he said was that if you break my covenant of the law, I will punish you by sending you into slavery/captivity. That is the only thing God said. But there are people out there that want to use their own interpretation and come to their own conclusion that because we broke the covenant, we therefore don't have to keep the law anymore. When did Yahweh ever tell you or any of us to not keep the law in certain locations or under certain circumstances? When did Yahweh say that because you are in prison or the hospital or in captivity or in Walmart or in a veterinarian clinic or in California or because you are at Disney World or inside a spaceship, you therefore don't have to keep the law anymore because you happen to be in a certain location? Or when did Yahweh say that because of your circumstance, you don't have to keep the law? Well, because I'm a slave, I can't keep the law, or because I'm sick, or because I'm tired, or because I'm overweight, or I don't have to keep the law anymore. Where in the Bible did Yahweh say that if you are a slave, or are sick, or you're tired, or you're overweight, or whatever the circumstance you happen to be in, you therefore don't have to keep the law anymore? As I said before, people are drawing their own conclusion and saying we don't have to keep the law anymore because we broke this covenant and are now in captivity. There is not one verse in the Bible where it says that we are not supposed to keep Yahweh's laws while in captivity, let alone anywhere where Yahweh says it is. Let me rephrase that. There is not one verse in the Bible where it says that we are not supposed to keep Yahweh's laws while in captivity, let alone anywhere where Yah says it out of his mouth. In Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 through 7, you are literally leaning to your own understanding if you say that because we broke the covenant and are now in captivity, we no longer have to keep the law while here in captivity. And I'll go ahead and read that Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 through 7 real quick. Okay, in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5, it reads, Trust in Yahweh with all thine heart, and lean not unto thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Be not wise in thy own eyes, fear Yahweh, and depart from evil. Excuse me. Also, there is a reason why some people out there will say and ask the question, are we still under the covenant of the law? Instead of asking the question, did Yahweh tell us to not keep the law in captivity? Because if that is the question, they will automatically lose that debate because there is no debating if Yahweh told us not to keep his law in captivity because Yahweh never said, do not keep my laws while in captivity. So because there are people who don't want to keep the law in captivity, or at least don't want to keep certain laws, they frame the question like this instead. Are we still under the covenant of the law? And because we did break Yahweh's covenant, they will then say that because the covenant is broken, we therefore don't have to keep the law since we're in captivity. And if you come back and say to them, where did Yahweh tell us that if we break his covenant, you therefore don't have to keep his law anymore, let alone keep it in captivity? They will then say, the debate or question is not whether if Yahweh said we are supposed to keep his laws in captivity. Instead, the question or debate is whether or not if we are still under the covenant. They use this tactic right here because they know they can't win an argument or a debate if Yah told his people to not keep his law while in captivity, because there is no word in the scriptures that says that. But they can try their best in trying to trick people by asking the question if we are still under the covenant of the law while we are living in captivity, because then they can use their own understanding and trying to manipulate people and thinking that they don't have to keep the law anymore. Now, there will be people out there that will say that in order to keep the law in captivity, you have to keep the whole law, which includes keeping the judgments. These judgments can include the ones that are mentioned in Deuteronomy chapter 13 verses 1 through 10 and Deuteronomy chapter 21 verses 18 through 21. So let's go to Deuteronomy and I'm going to read some judgments to you all. So we're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 13 and I'm going to read verses 1 through 10. So Deuteronomy chapter 13 verse 1, it reads, If there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder come to pass, whereof he spake unto thee, saying, Let us go after other gods, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for Yahweh your Elohim proveth you to know whether ye love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul. Ye shall walk after Yahweh your Elohim, and fear him, and keep his commandments, and obey his voice, and ye shall serve him, and cleave unto him. And that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he hath spoken to turn you away from Yahweh your Elohim, which brought you out of the land of Egypt, and redeemed you out of the house of bondage, to thrust thee out of the way which Yahweh the Elohim commanded thee to walk in. So shalt thou put the evil away from the midst of thee. If thy brother, the son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or the wife of thy bosom, or thy friend, which is as thy own soul, entice thee secretly, saying, Let us go and serve other gods, which thou hast not known, thou, nor thy fathers, namely, of the gods of the people which are round about you, nigh unto thee, or far off from thee, from the one end of the earth even unto the other end of the earth. Thou shalt not consent unto him, nor hearken unto him, neither shall thine eye pity him, neither shalt thou spare, neither shalt thou conceal him, but thou shalt surely kill him. Thy hand shall be first upon him to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of the people. And thou shalt stone him with stones, that he die, because he hath sought to thrust thee away from Yahweh the Elohim, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. So this right here, what I just read, from verse 1 all the way to 10, these are judgments. And the way these judgments are supposed to work is like from verse 1 to verse 5. If there's like somebody that comes up to you and say, hey, I have this vision here, and this vision is I'm just giving an example, like I have this vision I had this man named JC, and he was going to be resurrected and come back to life, and therefore you start worshiping him and blah 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 blah, all that stuff. If somebody like that comes up to you, you're supposed to kill that person. And from verses 6 all the way to 10, if you're a family member of yours, whether they're a brother or your son, your own daughter, if they like come to you and say and try to like get you to worship other false gods, you're supposed to kill them. So that's pretty much what a judgment is. But what those judgments are talking about in Deuteronomy chapter 13, part of that judgment is that you have to kill those people. So let's read one more judgment. We're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 21. And I'm going to read verses 18 through 21. So Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 18, it reads, If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him, we will not hearken unto them, then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of his city, and unto the gate of his place. And they shall say unto the elders of his city, This our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And all the men of his city shall stone him with stones, that he die. So shalt thou put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. So once again, this is another judgment. If parents have a son that's being rebellious, being stubborn, the son is pretty much not obeying Yahweh's laws and all that stuff. But more specifically, he's being stubborn and rebellious. He's a glutton. He's a drunkard. Then the parents can take their son, bring him out into certain individuals, certain elders, and then they can kill that son. They can stone him to death. So that's another judgment that's being talked about here in Deuteronomy chapter 21. Now I will grant to these people that we should be doing the entire law, which does include keeping Yahweh's judgments. Nowhere does it say in the scriptures we have to keep Yahweh's judgments unless we are in captivity. No, it says keep Yahweh's judgments point blank, period. That means that I should be executing Yahweh's judgments here in America. However, I am not executing any of Yahweh's judgments, and so I am sinning against Yahweh, and I am not keeping his whole law. Now, you might say that I am picking and choosing which laws to keep and which ones to not keep. You might say that you're choosing to obey the commandments and statutes, but you're ignoring the judgments, and you're absolutely right in saying that. I am picking and choosing, but guess what though? You're doing the exact same thing as well. For the people that say you don't have to keep the law in captivity, but instead all you have to do is fear Yahweh, depart from evil, and have integrity. You're choosing to do those three things and ignoring the commandments, statutes, and judgments as well. In Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 6 and Deuteronomy chapter 10 verses 12 through 13, it tells you to not only fear Yahweh, but it also tells you to keep his commandments. How are you going to tell people that they should fear Yahweh but don't keep the commandments when both of these verses are literally telling you to do both things? So here is the way I see it. You can either do one of two things. You can either keep all of Yahweh's laws except for the ones that you know for sure that you can't keep here in captivity, such as the Passover, and try your absolute best to do the law, commandments, and statutes, or you cannot do any of these and literally just do whatever you want to do. If you want to worship false gods, then go right ahead and do so. If you want to rape, murder, and steal, then do that as well. And when judgment day comes and you are standing in front of Yahweh, you can look at him and tell him the reason why you purposely did wicked things was because you, Yahweh, never told us to keep the law in captivity. I personally believe that it would be better for Hebrews to keep the law to the best of their ability and do 7 out of the 8 things that Yahweh tells us to do, but ignore doing any of the judgments here in America, as opposed to doing 3 out of the 8 things that Yahweh told us to do. Which is better? To do almost everything that Yahweh tells you to do, or to do very little of what Yahweh tells you to do? Now, of course, it would be better for all of us to do everything that Yahweh told us to do, but there is not a single Hebrew on the face of the earth that is alive today that is doing everything that Yahweh told them to do. This includes fearing Yahweh, departing from evil, keeping the judgments, testimonies, statutes, laws, precepts, commandments, ordinances. In closing, I want to provide 2 more pieces of evidence that prove to everyone that not only can we keep the law in captivity, but we must keep it. These pieces of evidence can be found in the book of Ezekiel. The first piece of evidence that I want to show is where Ezekiel is being sent by Yahweh to the children of Israel who are currently in captivity to warn them and hopefully get them to stop being wicked. All of this is proven in Ezekiel chapter 1 verses 1 through 3, Ezekiel chapter 2 verses 1 through 10, and Ezekiel chapter 3 verses 1 through 23. So I am first going to start off in Ezekiel chapter 1, and I'm going to read verses 1 through 3. Oh, excuse me. In Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 1, it reads, Now it came to pass in the 13th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river of Chebar, that the heavens were open, and I saw visions of Elohim. In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity, the word of Yahweh came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, the son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Chebar, and the hand of Yahweh was there upon him. Now keep in mind, what these three verses, what I just read, this is saying that Israel is, at this time, Israel was in captivity. As it said in verse 1, now it came to pass in the 13th year, in the 4th month, the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives, in other words, slaves. And read in verse 2, it says, in the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiachin's captivity. So Ezekiel was among the other captives. He was among the other slaves, okay? So keep that in mind, because that is very important. Ezekiel was not in the promised land at this specific time. He was among the captives. Okay. And now I'm going to go to Ezekiel chapter 2. I'm going to read verses 1 through 10. So Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 1, it reads, and he said unto me, Son of man, stand upon thy feet, and I will speak unto thee. And the Spirit entered into me when he spake unto me, and set me upon my feet, that I heard him that spake unto me. And he said unto me, Son of man, I send thee to the children of Israel, to a rebellious nation that have rebelled against me. They and their fathers have transgressed against me, even unto this very day. So, so Ezekiel is going to be sent to the children of Israel, okay, which committed sins and all types of abominations. So Ezekiel is going to be sent to these people, to these slaves, these captives. Verse 4: For they are impudent children and stiff-hearted. I do send thee unto them, and thou shalt say unto them, Thus saith Yahweh Elohim. And they, whether they will hear or whether they will forbear, for they are a rebellious house, yet shall they know that there have been a prophet among them. And thou, son of man, be not afraid of them, neither be afraid of their words, though briars and thorns be with thee, and thou dost dwell among scorpions. Be not afraid of their words, nor be dismayed at their looks, though they be a rebellious house. And thou shalt speak my words unto them, whether they will hear or whether they will forbear, for they are most rebellious. But thou, son of man, hear what I say unto thee. Be not thou rebellious like that rebellious house. Open thy mouth and eat that I give thee. And when I looked, behold, a hand was sent unto me, and lo, a roll of a book was therein. And he spread it before me, and it was written within and without, and there was written therein lamentations and mourning and woe. So keep in mind, Ezekiel's being sent to the children of Israel who are currently in captivity, and he's being sent to them really for the purpose of trying to get these people to hopefully that they can change their ways. Hopefully they can stop sinning. That's why he's being sent to them, to try to get them to change and start doing what's lawful and right, and what's righteous and not evil. So that's why he's being sent to these people, which again are in captivity. They're not in the promised land. Now I'm going to go to Ezekiel chapter 3, and I'm going to read from verse 1 all the way to verse 23. So Ezekiel chapter 1, Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 1, it reads, Moreover he said unto me, Son of man, eat that thou findest, eat this roll, and go speak unto the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he caused me to eat that roll. And he said unto me, Son of man, cause thy belly to eat, and fill thy bowels with this roll that I give thee. Then did I eat, and it was in my mouth as honey for sweetness. And he said unto me, Son of man, go, get thee unto the house of Israel, and speak with my words unto them. For thou art not sent to a people of a strange speech and of a hard language, but to the house of Israel. Not too many people of a strange speech and of a hard language, whose words thou canst not understand. Sure, excuse me. Surely had I sent thee to them, they would have hearkened unto thee. But the house of Israel will not hearken unto thee, for they will not hearken unto me. For all the house of Israel are imputed and hard-hearted. Behold, I have made thy face strong against their faces, and their forehead strong against their foreheads. As an adamant harder than flint have I made thy forehead. Fear them not, neither be dismayed at their looks, though they be a rebellious house. Moreover, he said unto me, Son of man, all my words that I shall speak unto thee receive in thy heart, and hear with thine ears. And go, get thee to them of the captivity. Keep in mind, in verse 11, I'll read that again. It says, And go, get thee to them of the captivity, unto the children of thy people, and speak unto them, and tell them, Thus saith Yahweh Elohim, whether they will hear, or whether they will forbear. So keep in mind, the children of Israel, they are not in the promised land, okay? They're not in Jerusalem. They are in captivity in another man's land, okay? And Ezekiel is going to go and speak to these people because Yahweh sent him to go and speak to these people to try to get them and change their ways. Then the Spirit took me up, and I heard behind me a voice of a great rushing, saying, Blessed be the glory of Yahweh from his place. I heard also the noise of the wings of the living creatures that touch one another, and the noise of the wheels over against them, and a noise of a great rushing. So the Spirit lifted me up and took me away, and I went in bitterness in the heat of my spirit, but the hand of Yahweh was strong upon me. Then I came to them of the captivity at Tel Aviv, that dwelt by the river Chebar. Now notice what it did not say. It did not say in verse 15, Then I came to them of the captivity at Jerusalem, that dwelt by the river at Israel. No. It said Tel Aviv and at the river Chebar. Okay. So they're not at Jerusalem, and they're not in the promised land. And that's very important. So keep that in mind. And I said, verse 15, I'll read it again. Then I came to them of the captivity of Tel Aviv, that dwelt by the river of Chebar, and I sat where they sat, and remained there astonished among them 7 days. And it came to pass at the end of 7 days, that the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore hear the word at my mouth, and give them warning from me. When I say unto the wicked, Thou shalt surely die, and thou givest him not warning, nor speakest to warn the wicked from his wicked way, to save his life, the same wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at thy hand. Yet if thou warn the wicked, and he turn not from his wickedness, nor from his wicked way, he shall die in his iniquity, but thou hast delivered thy soul. So before I continue reading, let me stop right there. Now, Ezekiel's being sent to the children of Israel who are in captivity. If the children of Israel cannot keep the law because they're in captivity, and they can only keep the law in the promised land, then my question that I have for the people out there that say, well, you can't keep the law in captivity, why would Yahweh send Ezekiel to people to our people, to the Hebrews who are in captivity in another man's land? Why would Yahweh send Ezekiel to them to try to get them to turn from their wicked ways? What will be the purpose of him doing that? And also, how would you go about turning from your wicked ways unless you kept the law? In order to, turn from your wicked ways, you have to keep the law. Okay? But yet there are people out there saying, well, you can't keep the law in captivity. So it doesn't make any sense at all for Yahweh to send Ezekiel to another man's land, to our people that are in captivity. It doesn't make sense for Yahweh to send Ezekiel to try to get Hebrews to change their ways in, in another man's land, but yet they can't keep the law in captivity. If you can keep the law in captivity, then this does make sense. It will make sense for Yahweh to send Ezekiel. What was the place he sent him to? He sent him to Tel Aviv. It would make sense for Yahweh to send Ezekiel to Tel Aviv, where the Hebrews are in captivity, to try to get them to change their ways. And in order for them to change their ways, they had to start keeping the law, the commandments, the statutes, and all that stuff. It would make sense for Yahweh to do that. But if they can't keep the law in captivity, then it would not make sense for Yahweh to send Ezekiel over there to try to get them to turn from their wicked ways. All right. Continuing on, verse 20. Again, when a righteous man do turn from his righteousness and commit iniquity, and I lay a stumbling block before him, he shall die, because thou hast not given him warning. He shall die in his sin, and his righteousness which he have done shall not be remembered, but his blood will I require at thy hand. Nevertheless, if thou warn the righteous man that the righteous sin not, and he doth not sin, he shall surely live, because he is warned. Also thou hast delivered thy soul. And the hand of Yahweh was there upon me, and he said unto me, Arise, go forth into the plain, and I will there talk with thee. Then I arose and went forth into the plain, and behold, the glory of Yahweh stood there, as the glory which I saw by the river of Chebar, and I fell on my face. So again, to make the point, the reason why Yahweh sent Ezekiel to the children of the captivity, which were the Hebrews, the reason why Yahweh sent Ezekiel over there was because he wanted those Hebrews to turn from their wicked ways. He sent Ezekiel over there to warn the people, hey, you guys, you've been doing all this wickedness. That's why you're here in captivity. Stop doing wicked and start doing that which is right. Start keeping the law, because if you keep the law, then you'll automatically start doing what's right. Because again, what's the whole purpose of the law? It's for you to turn from your wicked ways. If you keep the law, then you won't be doing any wicked things. Okay, that's why Yahweh sent Ezekiel over there, and so Ezekiel was sent over there to tell them, hey, stop doing wicked stuff. Start doing what's lawful and right. The last piece of evidence that I want to show is where it talks about in Ezekiel where people can even sin while in captivity. This is proven in Ezekiel chapter 37, verses 21 through 25. So let's go there. I'm going to go to Ezekiel chapter 37, and I'm going to prove that it is possible to sin while in captivity, or in other words, sin while you're not in the promised land. You can sin outside the promised land, but more specifically, you can sin in captivity. So, in Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 21, it reads, And say unto them, Thus saith Yahweh Elohim, Behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, And one king shall be king to them all, and they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms any more at all. Neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places wherein they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their Elohim. And David my servant shall be king over them, and they shall have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments, and observe my statutes, and do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. Now, from verses 21 through 25, all of this is future prophecies. Is a future prophecy. So this has not happened yet. It will eventually happen, but it has not occurred yet. This is a future prophecy. So I want to zone in on verse 23. I'll read verse 23 again. It says, well, let's let me go ahead and start all with verse 21. Verse 21 says, and say unto them, thus saith Yahweh Elohim, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen. So Yahweh, he's going to gather his people that are currently in captivity among the heathen, or in other words, he's going to come here to America. He's going to gather all the Hebrews that are in America, among the Gentiles, among the heathen. He's going to gather them on every side and bring them to their own land. He's going to bring not all of us, but he's going to bring a remnant back to the promised land. In verse 22, and I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all. So we're going to the chosen ones, the remnant. They're going to go back to the land of Israel, and David, he's going to rule over them. And we won't be separated into two kingdoms. You won't have like Judah, one part of the kingdom, and the rest of Israel, another part of the kingdom. No, they're all going to be together as one whole nation, one whole kingdom. And verse 23, neither shall they defile themselves anymore with their idols. They're not going to be worshiping false idols anymore. They're not going to be worshiping JC anymore. The Hebrews that are here in America, they're not going to be worshiping JC or the Muslim God or the Hindu God or any other God, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places. Wherever Hebrews are dwelling at in captivity, Yahweh is going to save them out of it. At least the righteous ones anyway, the remnant. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places wherein they have sinned. Now I want to zone in on that sentence right there where it says wherein they have sinned. So Yahweh's going to go to wherever the Hebrews are scattered at in captivity, whether that be in America or some other country, because we're scattered out the entire world. Not all the Hebrews are here in America. Some are in different countries. But anyway, wherever we're scattered at, Yahweh is going to gather his people. And it says, wherein they have sinned. So you're telling me that you can sin in captivity? Well, according to this verse right here, you can sin in captivity. And what is sin? Sin is the transgression of the law. Okay? So if you sinned, then that means you've broken Yahweh's law. So for the people out there that say you don't have to keep the covenant of the law, or you don't have to keep Yahweh's law, well, they're wrong. They're definitely wrong. You can keep Yahweh's laws, because if you couldn't keep Yahweh's laws, then it would literally be impossible to sin. Okay? In order, like I said before, sin is the transgression of the law. So if you can't keep the law in captivity, then that means you cannot sin. It is impossible to sin. But if it is possible to sin, then that means you can keep the law. Okay? So for everybody out there that's saying you can't keep the law in captivity, they are going to have to explain verse 23 right here. They're going to have to explain to me what this means when it says, "But I will save them out of all their dwelling places wherein they have sinned." They're going to have to explain that to me if they say that you can't keep the law in captivity. "And will cleanse them, so shall they be my people, and I will be their Elohim." The last statement that I will make is this. For the people out there that say we are not supposed to keep the law in captivity, my question to them is this. Is it possible to sin while in captivity? If the answer to that question is no, then they are going to have to explain what verse 23 in Ezekiel chapter 37 means. If the answer to that question is yes, then it defeats their argument that we can't keep the law in captivity, because what is sin after all? Sin is the transgression of the law. So if you are sinning in captivity, then that means you are breaking Yahweh's laws. And that pretty much concludes this video. And now I have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that we can keep Yahweh's laws in captivity, specifically here in America. So anybody out there that says we cannot keep Yahweh's laws here in captivity, they're absolutely wrong. And if any of you all out there who are watching this video, if you know somebody like that says we can't keep Yahweh's laws here in America, then show them this video, and this video should automatically, hopefully, get them to change their mind and get them to see that they are wrong and that we can keep Yahweh's laws here in America. So if anybody out there knows somebody out there that's saying we can't keep Yahweh's laws here in America, please show them this video. Alright, well, before I go, I want to first give all honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh by saying hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Praise the mighty Yah. Yahweh is righteous. Thank you, and shalom.